What is technology integration? Technology integration is the use of technology tools in the daily classroom activities in order to allow students to apply computer and technology skills to learning and problem solving. When we talk about technology integration in the classroom, we are talking about a planned and highly structured and purposeful use of technology with the ultimate goal being student engagement. Successful technology integration is achieved when the use of technology is routine and transparent, accessible and readily available for the task at hand, and supports the curricular goals and helps the students to effectively reach their goal. Technology tools can provide students and teachers with access to up-to-date material, methods of collecting and recording data, ways to collaborate with students, teachers, and experts around the world, opportunities for expressing understanding via multimedia, and learning that is relevant and assessment that is authentic, while training for publishing and presenting their knowledge.
Now that I have briefly talked about technology integration and what it is, I'm going to talk about how I will use technology integration in my future classroom. While I am talking about my future classroom, I'm going to assume that every student in my classroom will have an iPad available to use. So first I'm going to talk about ways to use technology. Um, with the iPads, students can go on virtual field trips. These field trips will allow the students to explore parts of the world outside of the classroom, but it is an inexpensive way to do so. I think being able to go on the virtual field trips that are aligned with our curriculum will be a great way for students to just make connections. Another thing that the students can use with their iPads is being able to conduct research. Whether it is just that we're talking about a topic and there's a word someone doesn't understand, they could Google the word and get a definition, or whether we want to know if a fact that one of the students thinks that they know is correct, we can research that. There's also apps that are user-friendly for students that they can conduct research. For example, if they wanted to learn about the presidents, they can do so. Making graphic organizers is another thing that the students can use with their iPads. With the graphic organizers, they can be organizing a story that they have read, their thoughts of a story that they have read, or they could be making an organizer related to their vocabulary words. One of the websites that I will be using for graphic organizers is MindMeister. I feel that this is user-friendly for my students. It's a great way for them to organize their thoughts. Another thing that the students can use with their iPads is designing videos. If they have conducted the research about a president, then they can design a video that explains to their classmates about what they have learned in their research. It's also a great way for me to create videos and have them be able to watch their lectures through a video. Some websites that I think my students would enjoy using are Powtoon, GoAnimate, and Voki. These are all user-friendly as well, and I think that my students would really enjoy creating the videos using. Another thing students can do when using the iPads is writing emails with students across the world. I would like to find a teacher who has a class that the students can have pen pals, but they will actually email back and forth instead of writing back and forth. And the last is they can listen to book recordings. No matter what age you are, it's still okay to be read to, and especially in the elementary age group, they can listen to videos that they may not actually be able to read on their own, which will help them improve their reading skills as well as their comprehension skills. So those are just a few of the ways that I will integrate technology in my future classroom. As stated before, for technology integration to be successful, there are a few things that a teacher should consider. One of those things was a routine. And also for the technology to be accessible. So how I will ensure that my students have a routine when using their iPads, as well as to make sure that it's quick and easy for us to get to our iPads. There'll be a section of my classroom where the students will store their iPads. The reason why they will not have them at the desk is I know that they can just become a distraction when they're not being used. So the students will have a place to dock their iPads when they're not using them. When we are ready to use them, we will have a system of which group goes first to get their iPads, and then they will go back to their desk and sit down. The most important thing about successful technology integration is that it supports the curriculum goals. In order for me to ensure that this is met, I will make sure that the technology is only enhancing what they're learning and it's not actually taking over the lesson. Yes, I want my students to learn the technology. They need to be able to complete an assignment, but I want the ultimate goal to be that the electronics just helped them be able to understand more of what we're learning. So why am I going to use technology integration in my classroom? As I stated before, it will be really easy just to do some quick research. So it allows the students to be able to access up-to-date material. The textbooks nowadays, sometimes they're 3 to 5 years old, and so some of that information may have already changed. So we can use the iPads to research and find out information that's a little bit more up to date. My students can also collect and record data. We can be doing any kind of activity and we may want to record our data, and the iPads will just be an easy way to do so. It also allows my students to be able to collaborate with one another. Back to the video making, the students could make videos with a partner or with a group of classmates, and this will just get them to learn how to collaborate with their classmates when making their videos. It gives them an opportunity to express their understanding via multimedia. So my students will be able to express what they're learning or how they like to learn with using the iPads. For example, when they research, some students may want to start with a broad topic and then narrow it down, and some students may want to start with the narrow topic and expand outward. It makes sure that the learning is relevant. With using the iPads, like going on the virtual classroom, the students' field trip, the students can be able to see things outside of the world and make the connections, which just can help them understand the importance of learning something. The assessment is also authentic. I will be able to assess as the students are working and applying what they're learning in the classroom, which I think is great. I think it is another great way besides just giving them a test that has multiple choice answers on it. And it also trains them to be able to put presentations together and make sure they're published and ready to go, and then being able to present them. With the videos, once they create their video and they have finalized it, they can give presentations to their classmates, and this just gets them used to giving presentations, which is something that they will need in the real world. When using technology integration in your classroom, there are 5 frameworks one can use when planning their lessons. These frameworks include TPACK, TIP, the SAM-R model, LODI, and TIM. TPACK, which stands for Technological Pedagogical Content Knowledge. The purpose, it is to attempt to identify the nature of knowledge required by teachers for technology integration in their teaching while addressing the complex, multifaceted, and situated nature of teacher knowledge. There are 7 components of TPACK. There are 3 primary components: content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and technological knowledge.
Content knowledge is the teacher's knowledge about the subject matter to be learned or taught. Pedagogical knowledge is the teacher's deep knowledge about the processes and practices or methods of teaching and learning. Technological knowledge is the knowledge about certain ways of thinking and working with technology tools and resources. There are 4 other components of TPACK. Pedagogical content knowledge, which is when the pedagogical and the content knowledge are working together. This pedagogy that is applicable to the teaching of specific content. Technological content knowledge is when technological knowledge and content knowledge is working together. It's an understanding of the manner in which technology and content can influence and constrain one another. Technological pedagogical knowledge, that is when technological and pedagogical knowledge is working together. And is an understanding of how teaching and learning can change when particular technologies are in particular ways. And so this creates the TPACK model. This is when all of these different components are working together. The SAM-R model is another technology integration framework we're going to talk about. The SAM-R model was created by Dr. Rubin. It has 4 stages: substitution, augmentation, modification, redefinition. The substitution and augmentation are part of the enhancement phase, while modification and redefinition is part of the transformation phase. Now let's talk about the stages. Stage 1, substitution. Technology acts as a direct tool substitute with no functional change. In other words, technology is used to perform the same task as was done before the use of computers. Stage 2, augmentation. Technology acts as a direct tool substitute with functional improvement. In other words, technology offers an effective tool to perform common tasks. Stage 3, modification. Technology allows for significant task redesign. This is the first step over the line between enhancing the traditional going-ons of the classroom. Common classroom tasks are being accomplished through the use of computer technology. And the final stage, redefinition, which is when technology allows for creation of new tasks previously inconceivable. LOTI, which stands for Levels of Teaching Innovation. The purpose of LOTI focuses on the delicate balance between instruction, assessment, and effective use of digital tools and resources to promote higher order thinking, engage students' learning, and authentic assessment practices in the classroom, which are all vital characteristics of 21st century teaching and learning. LOTI consists of 6 different levels. Level 0 is non-use. No technology use and perception that technology use has no value to learning. Level 1 is awareness. No student use of technology tied to content, and the computer is a reward station for non-content related work. Technology is used mostly by the teacher/facilitator. Level 2, exploration, teacher-centered, and the lower order thinking skills such as knowledge and comprehension focuses strictly on the content understanding. Level 3, infusion. This is also teacher-centered. It requires higher order thinking skills such as application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. It focuses on the content and the process. Teaching may be learner-centered. Level 4, integration. It's also student-centered. Students are applying learning to real world, and learning becomes authentic and relevant. Level 5, expansion. It's also student-centered, and it's a two-way collaboration with the community. TIM, which stands for Technology Integration Matrix. The purpose of TIM. It provides a framework for defining and evaluating technology integration. It sets a clear vision for effective teaching with technology. It gives teachers and administrators a common language for setting goals, and it helps target professional development resources effectively. What does TIM consist of? TIM consists of 5 interdependent characteristics of meaning learning environments: active, collaborative, constructive, authentic, and goal-directed. It also consists of 5 levels of technology integration. These 5 levels are entry, adoption, adaption, infusion, and transformation. Now let's talk about the meaning of active. Active is when students are engaged in using technology as a tool rather than passively receiving information from the technology. Collaborative. Students use technology tools to collaborate with one another rather than working individually at all times. Constructive. Students use technology tools to connect new information to their prior knowledge rather than to passively receive information. Authentic. Students use technology tools to link learning activities to the world beyond the instructional setting rather than working on decontextualized assignments. Goal-directed. Students use technology tools to set goals, plan activities, monitor progress, and evaluate results rather than simply completing assignments without reflection. On to the 5 levels of technology integration. Entry. The teacher begins to use technology tools to deliver curriculum content to the students. Adoption. The teacher directs students in conventional and procedural use of technology. Adaption. The teacher facilitates students in exploring and independently using technology. Infusion. The teacher provides the learning context, the students choose the technology. Transformation. The teacher encourages the innovative use of technology tools. Technology tools are used to facilitate higher order learning activities that may not have been possible without the use of technology. Together, the 5 levels of technology integration and the 5 characteristics of meaningful learning environments create a matrix of 25 cells.
We have reviewed several of the frameworks that someone can use when integrating technology in their classroom. There's one more framework left, and that is the TIP framework. The TIP framework is one that I personally think that is the easiest to use. It is one that I will use in my future classroom. So I'm going to explain the TIP framework as well as explain to you how I would use the TIP framework.
What is TIP's purpose? TIP is made up of 5 phases. Each of these phases outlines a set of planning and implementation steps that help ensure technology integration use will be effective and successful in meeting needs. TIP's 6 phases include standards, relative advantage, assessment, instructional environment, integration strategies, and evaluation and revision. Phase 1. Determine the standards being addressed.
Phase 1 of the TIP is standards, and this is where you determine the standards that you're going to address. You determine 2 sets of standards, your content standards and your NETS standards, which is the National Educational Technology Standards for Students. So if I was going to incorporate technology with a history lesson, I would first go and look at the standards for my class's grade that they have for history, and I would pick the standards that my lesson will cover, and then I will go and look at the NETS standards and the technology that I'm going to use to see what type of standards will be addressed in this lesson.
Phase 2. State relative advantages.
In phase 2, you are to state the relative advantages. So, as a teacher, I will ask myself, why am I using technology-based method for this lesson? I will ask myself, what type of problem are the students going to address during this lesson? and with the use of technology. And I will also ask myself if the technology-based methods offers a solution with sufficient relative advantages. And also, I will include language from content and technology standards. So basically, that will be where I figure out if the technology that I'm planning to use, it really is going to enhance the students' learning.
Phase 3, Assessment of Standards.
Phase 3 is the assessment of standards. During this phase, I will ask myself how I am going to be able to see what the students learned, content and technology wise. It's also where I determine what outcomes I expect from my students and what the best ways. I also ask myself what the best ways to assess the outcomes are. Is my assessment just going to be as I walk around and see the students working together, or is my assessment going to be when they present whatever they have made? There's various different ways that you can assess while students are using the technology. It's just important in this phase for you to determine what you're going to assess and how you're going to assess it.
Phase 4, Prepare the Instructional Environment.
Phase 4 is prepare the instructional environment. In this phase, I will figure out what equipment and software, media, and materials that the students will need to be able to use. And then I will also make sure that I have these materials available for the students to use. I will also determine how I will arrange the material, whether or not I will have the iPads, each person gets an iPad, or if it's a group project, if there's one iPad and you have one group in one section of the room. It's also where I determine if it is going to be an individual or group project. This basically is more of the planning for the implementation of the project. And you also need to determine what type of supervision will be needed. How will I monitor what the students are, how the students are on their screen and what they're seeing, or if there's a way that I can arrange the students so that I can see everyone's iPads, which we'll talk about a little bit later on with the management and technology.
Phase 5, Design Integration Strategies.
Phase 5 is design integration strategies, and this is where I will ask myself what teaching strategies and activities will work best. What kind of instructional methods are needed for this lesson. I'll also ask myself how the technology will support these methods and how I can prepare my students to be able to use the technology during the lessons. And I also need to determine my time frame with the assignment, whether the assignment is 20 minutes or whether it's a whole week-long assignment where they work on bits and pieces of it throughout the week.
Phase 6, Evaluate and Revise Integration Strategies.
Phase 6 is evaluate and revise, and this is where I will, after the lesson, determine what worked and what didn't work and how I may change things in the future with doing this lesson. I will also determine if the technology strategies worked, or as well as the integration strategies. Basically, it's just self-reflecting. It's me grading myself on how the lesson went. I also can use this phase to ask my students what they liked and what they didn't like, and some things that they would like to see change. That way I get some feedback from my students.
Best practices with management and technology integration. One of the best practices is to set a clear understanding of rules. The students need to know what they are and are not allowed to do. It is also important for the teachers to apply these rules every time the technology is being implemented in the classroom. Here are some rules that one should enforce when using technology in the classroom.
Implementing technology integration in your classroom, it is very important to have a management plan. And I'm going to talk to you about my management plan. And remember that I'm assuming that each of my students have their own iPad to use. The first week of school, or the first time we ever use the technology, I will go over some routines of how to get out the device, the device should be put away, how we will use the device, and how we will handle the device with care. I will also go over some rules that go along with using the iPad. So let's talk about how I will get my students to, what kind of routine I'll get my students in. When the students are putting it away, as I mentioned before, I will have a station in the classroom where the students will place their iPads and plug them up. The students will know that that where their iPad goes and which plug to use for their iPad. And each time that we are going to use them, they will go in their groups to get their iPad. They will unplug their iPad and go back to their seat. When we first start learning how to use the technology, I will give step-by-step instructions for each assignment until they feel comfortable. And then we will also talk about how we will carry our devices, that we will carry them with both hands, and that when we use our devices, we don't slam them down on our desk, that we use them carefully. This will also, in the long run, help limit time when the students know the routine of how to get their iPads and how to put up their iPads and how to use their iPads. It just limits the time of me trying to tell them what to do. Setting clear rules when we first using the technology is very important. I will have the rules placed on a poster in my classroom so that students can see them at all times and so that I can refer back to them. When we start using the rules, using the technology, I will go over the rules every time, and then over time, when I know that the students know what is expected of them, it will just be assumed that they are to follow the rules. Some of the major rules that I will include is that any type of tricky thing needs to be left up to the experts. So if something pops up on their iPad and they're not real sure what to do with it, they need to make sure that they come ask me. And if I do not know what to do with it, then I will ask our tech personnel. Another rule will be to respect the devices. The devices are something that is a privilege for them to use, so they are to use them respectfully. Another rule is to keep food and drinks away from the devices. When students are working on their iPads, they will not be allowed to have any type of food or drink around. And they also are to only be on the iPads doing what is related to the activity. They cannot go and explore on their own or with anything that does not have to do with the activity that we're doing. If students break any of these rules, they will lose their privilege for the day to use their iPad. And if they continue to break the rules, then further punishment will be put in place. Another thing that's very important with management is making sure I can monitor all students. To ensure that I can monitor my students, I will have my classroom desk set up in a horse or U shape, which you saw an image of just a second ago. And also the students will have to work on their iPads where it's visible for me to be able to see them. So they will have to have them on top of the desk if they're working on their desk. If they are working in a group, then in the floor, then the iPads will have to be where I can see them. They will not be allowed to place them in their lap under their desk because I need to be able to make sure that I can monitor what they're on. Another thing with classroom management is allowing the students to be able to express their uniqueness, which is something I mentioned before, to keep the students engaged and interested in what we're doing, I need to give them some options. So when we're creating the video, they would have the option to decide what type of website they would like to use to be able to create their video, things like that. In order for me to teach with technology, another very important thing with classroom management is for me to learn as much as I can about the technology. Technology is constantly changing, and so if I am expecting my students to learn it, I need to learn it myself. Also, a very important thing that I know is that I will never know everything that can be used with the technology, and that there is always something to be learned with using the technology, so I will always keep that in mind. These are just a few of the things that I will enforce in my classroom to ensure that when I'm using the technology integration, I have great classroom management.
Classroom arrangement is another important thing to consider with technology management. You want to arrange your students' desks so you can monitor their screens. You also want to be able to easily walk around the classroom. Here are some ideas on how to arrange your classroom's desk. Give your students choices. Allow them to use various applications when learning. Here are some examples of what the students could use when creating presentations. Always be willing to learn. Technology changes every day. You will always have something new to learn. You can learn from coworkers, students, or you can even do your own learning by conducting your own research.
When creating my lesson plans that involve technology integration, there are a few things that I will be sure to consider when I'm planning my lessons. First, I will determine my time frame, whether or not I'm going to do the activity for the 20-minute block, or if I'm going to do the activity for a whole week, just for 20 minutes each day. I will also determine my standards and what I want my students to learn. And then I can determine what technologies are available for the students to use and what resources that I feel will benefit the students. But I will make sure that I plan my lessons around the curriculum that I'm trying to teach and around the standards before I determine the technology. It is very important for me to ensure that my technology is enhancing the students' learning and not hindering it. So it's to make sure that doesn't happen, I will plan my lesson and then integrate the technology into it. And lastly, I will need to have a backup plan in case the technology, in case we're unable to use it, like if the Wi-Fi is not working. I will need to come up with a plan for how we can still do the lesson without the technology.
Lesson planning. Incorporating technology into lesson plans is a great way to increase student engagement. It allows for different learning styles and abilities. The students are able to have more control of their learning. There are some things to consider when implementing technology, such as how much time do we have to spend on the lesson and what technologies are available for the students to use. It is important to plan the lesson first and then decide the role technology will play. It should always support and reinforce learning and never precede it. You also need to consider how you will monitor the students and prevent them from getting distracted. Lastly, you will need to have a backup plan in case you are unable to use the technology.
There are some management strategies that can be used with any form of technology. This includes walking around, all eyes on me, seating arrangements, and negative consequences. With walking around, teachers constantly walk around the classroom. This is good for two reasons. You can monitor what is on the student's screen, and you can be there to assist as needed. An added bonus is that students will not know when you might walk past their screen, so they are less likely to get on something they shouldn't. All Eyes on Me is another management strategy that can be used with any type of technology. It is when teachers are about to share something with the class, so they say, "All eyes on me," and the students will know to stop what they are doing and look and listen to the teacher. If a student is off task, it is important to have a plan for what negative consequences they will receive. One consequence could be that they lose the ability to use their device for the day.
Some management strategies that I will use in my classroom is walking around. And this is just where I am walking around the room as the students are working. And again, my classroom the desk will be set up in a horseshoe or U shape. This will allow me to just make some assessments as I walk through. I can see if the students are understanding what they're supposed to do or how they're applying their knowledge. Again, it allows me to monitor their screens so I can see what they are on and if they are supposed to be on it and if they're not supposed to. It also gives me a chance to facilitate and assist the students' learning and to be there for any questions that they have. Walking around keeps me involved in their learning. A bonus is that they will be scared that I will catch them on something that they're not supposed to. So if they don't know when I'm going to walk by, that can just prevent them from getting on something they shouldn't. Another strategy that I will use is flip it over. Flip it over is where I would just say flip it over, and the students would flip their iPads over and place them at the corner of their desk. This is when, if I needed the whole class to listen and they're working, then I could just say flip it over, and they would pause and flip it over, and they would turn and look at me so I can make sure that they are really listening. It's also a good thing to use if I have the iPads out but they're not using them right then. They can flip them over. Traffic light is another strategy. This is where I will have a literal picture of a traffic light, and when the traffic light is on red, the students know that the iPads should not be out. They should be placed in the station of the classroom plugged up. When the traffic light is yellow, the students will have the devices or the iPads on their desk, and they may get them out. Let's say we're talking and someone has a question about something and I'm not even sure about the answer, or maybe I am sure but I want them to look it up. They can quickly look it up, but they are to put it right back down once they answer the question. So it's only there for educational purposes. And then green would be when they are actually working on an activity. So if they are creating a video, the traffic light would be on green because they would have the devices out the entire time, unless I say flip it over, which to get their attention to tell them something. So these are just a few of the strategies that I plan to use in my future classroom.